Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out. I'm State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer. I represent the 100th District, which is all or part of 10 counties in West Central Illinois. Here we are again at the start of the second week, the last week of veto session. The General Assembly has a number of issues that should be coming before us, dealing with a number of issues like the rising cost of energy, which unfortunately I think they're trying to continue to raise those costs on our constituents. The Chicago mass transit fiscal cliff, and instead of focusing on those issues and trying to get a real solution done, Governor Pritzker is once again wading into national politics. Pritzker and his Democrat buddies have been talking about a mid-decade redistricting of Illinois' congressional map to counteract Texas and other Republican states. Governor Pritzker recently said, "We have to see what they decide to do about Texas. I think we ought to play by the rules," but acknowledged counterbalance might be necessary, which I would argue is what some of those states are doing as a counterbalance to what states like Illinois, Massachusetts, New Mexico, and many others have done with their redistricting. Pritzker said, I think cheating the way the president wants to is improper. We all ought to stand up against it. People ought to be outraged." What people ought to be outraged about is Governor Pritzker himself and his flip-flop on the issue of fair maps. As a candidate for governor, Pritzker said he was for an independent map and he would not sign any map that was drawn by politicians. Then as governor, he happily signed a Democrat-drawn map that is one of the worst examples of gerrymandering in the history of our nation. J.B. Pritzker broke his promise to Illinois families, all to further empower corrupt Democrat Party bosses like former Speaker Madigan. If there were a master class on how to rig a map, Illinois would be the lab, and J.B. Pritzker would be the tenured professor. On his watch, Democrats drew some of the most shameless gerrymandered maps in America, graded an F by Princeton University, which is not a bastion of conservatism. He got an F by Princeton University's gerrymandering project, and that's not reform, that is pure political power. But Governor Pritzker didn't stop there. In August, when Texas Democrats fled their state to block a redistricting vote, Governor Pritzker rolled out the red carpet. On national television, he joked that if Texans wanted to stop gerrymandering, they should come to Illinois. Pritzker then went on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, where Colbert himself pointed out just how gerrymandered Illinois' congressional maps are, highlighted by the Scorpion Tail, which is the 13th congressional district. When pressed about gerrymandered maps, Pritzker's flippant response was, and I quote, "We let kindergartners draw them." And instead of showing remorse, he's now boasting about the possibility of making maps even more partisan when he said, "Can we draw lines that look more like 15-2? We can." Governor Pritzker is leaving behind a trail of broken promises and failed policies as he seeks to elevate himself on the national level. He is clearly more interested in scoring political points in Washington, D.C. than he is in working to end the culture of corruption in Illinois. I'll now turn this over to Leader Dan Ugasti.
Thank you. The hypocrisy in Illinois and in this capital has never been greater. I'm State Representative Dan Ugasti of 65th District. I want to thank you all for joining us today to call this out and let voters in Illinois know what the party in the supermajority, the party that controls every level of government in this state, is doing. As you all know, yesterday, Congressional Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was here in Illinois to further speak with our legislative leaders about further gerrymandering the already most gerrymandered map in the entire country. This is something that for some reason our governor seems to be championing. And what did our legislative leaders do? They met with him. Why would you meet with someone that has to fly in from somewhere else in the country to discuss something like this unless you're open to do it, or at least considering doing it? If you are firmly opposed to it, if you firmly believe that we should not do this, wouldn't they have just said, no, you'll be wasting your time, don't bother coming here, we're not doing it? I hope that was the answer when I first heard the responses. I'm not so certain that's the case now. So where's the hypocrisy? Well, let's remember how we got here. As Leader Davidsmeyer pointed out, Governor Pritzker made a campaign promise in 2018. He would not sign a partisan gerrymandered map. And he signed not one, actually, but two of them. Two of the most gerrymandered legislative maps in the country. Then he also signs the worst congressional map in the country and a gerrymandered Supreme Court map. Earlier this year, we sue. We sue based upon a nonpartisan expert who has done work for both parties across the country that says we have 52 state representative districts that are against our own Constitution. They don't meet the standards that have been set by the Supreme Court previously. The State Board of Elections is the defendant. How does the Attorney General respond on behalf of the State Board of Elections? No position. But our legislative leaders, the Speaker and the Senate President, then feel the need to insert themselves into this, a case in which they were never even named as a party, and said, you know what? No, you're too late. You should have done this earlier. The voters need to know who the representatives are going to be. They need some certainty that once we draw maps, they know who their voters are going to be. You can't undo them later, despite the fact that it's happened all over the country in previous court cases. Pennsylvania most recently changed congressional maps in 2018 for the 2010 census. That's what our legislative leaders argue, and guess what? The Illinois Supreme Court agreed, so we were done. Where was the governor on all this? Where was the governor who promised us fair maps? He was stone cold silent. But now the governor is talking about redrawing maps to further gerrymander them, and it appears the legislative leaders are willing to consider it. This is the ultimate in hypocrisy. They aren't worried about protecting Illinois voters' rights here. They aren't worried about protecting democracy. This isn't about that. This is protecting about what they really want, power. And that is it, plain and simple, and their actions and words demonstrate it. If they believe we need to open maps to address fairness, you know what? I agree, for the voters of Illinois. So let's then open all the maps. Our voters' voices here in Illinois are being denied. But this time, let's do it right. Let's have maps out that the public gets to see for a significant period of time, actually comment on, and have their say in. And not a map that gets passed with less than 24 hours notice that no one in the public has had a chance to see or review or weigh in on. Or better yet, let's let an independent commission draw our maps, and let's do it fairly in the first place, and let the voters decide who they want to represent them. Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Leader Spain.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm State Representative Ryan Spain from Peoria. You know, we are accustomed to watching Democrats in this building try to change the rules in the middle of the game. But now what we're watching is an attempt to change the rules after the game has already ended. Yesterday, candidates from across the state of Illinois showed up here in Springfield. Some showed up earlier in the weekend to camp out at the State Board of Elections and file their nominating petitions for office. Yesterday, we had 69 candidates for Congress, for United States Congress in the state of Illinois, have already filed their petitions for nomination as of 8 a.m. Yesterday morning. So if we are to consider doubling down on corrupt gerrymandering strategies that apparently the legislative leaders, the governor, and the Democratic leader of the United States Congress are interested in, it is the ultimate disenfranchisement of the voters of the state of Illinois. Candidates have approached voters throughout 17 gerrymandered congressional districts, getting their signatures on a petition, submitting that these voters believe that these candidates should stand for them and appear on the ballot. And if we pursue this type of action, the rights of those voters will be flushed away, throwing our election process into a tailspin for congressional elections. So we are here to urge the legislative leaders to exercise common sense and appreciation for the voters of the state of Illinois. It's time that we re-enfranchise voters and protect their rights in the state of Illinois. And it's time that we move away from the dripping hypocrisy that has been laid bare by Governor Pritzker. Again, as you've heard, this is a governor who betrayed one of his core campaign promises, provided the gerrymandering harbor for Texas Democrats so they could seek refuge in an attempt to rise up on the right side of gerrymandering activities. And now he is coming down and coming forward and getting lampooned on national television for the cartoonish gerrymandering that already exists in Illinois, and now considering and indulging it even further is such an insult to all of us as Illinois voters. The last piece I'd like to mention is with regard to Leader Jeffries. I find it infuriating and offensive that the Democratic leader of the United States Congress, a person who is uniquely responsible for a month-long federal government shutdown, would find it in his interest to come to Illinois to advocate for further corrupt gerrymandering. This is a leader who has already been blocked in his home state of New York from some of the gerrymandering that we're accustomed to seeing in Illinois. And now he comes to our state asking for Illinois lawmakers to be complicit in further gerrymandering and corruption. Leader Jeffries, it's offensive. You need to get back to work in Washington, D.C., and you need to work to get the government open. We have real problems with air traffic control, with SNAP benefits, with federal workers not being paid. It's ridiculous and inappropriate for you to show your face in this building. Get back to work.